The Krell battlecruiser hung in low orbit like a vulture that had just spotted roadkill, except this vulture had plasma cannons and an undeserved sense of superiority. Inside the tactical bay, Commander Zaltek watched his holographic display with the kind of confidence that comes from never having been properly humiliated. That was about to change, but he didn't know that yet. Nobody ever does. "Scan complete, Commander," his tactical officer chirped, mandibles clicking with what passed for excitement among the Krell. Settlement designated Human Colony 774. Population 47. Threat assessment laughable. Zaltek's 3 eyes narrowed with satisfaction. Humans. The galaxy's newest punching bag. They'd stumbled onto the interstellar stage about 15 years ago with their clunky fusion drives and adorable optimism, and the established powers had been taking turns reminding them where they ranked. Spoiler alert, it was somewhere between diplomatic afterthought and those guys who always show up to negotiations with paper documents. "Isolate individual targets," Zaltek commanded, his voice carrying that special tone of someone who's about to make a terrible decision and feel really good about it. The targeting system went to work, because that's what soulless algorithms do. They don't judge, they don't warn, they just calculate and report. The hologram zoomed in on a lone figure at the settlement's edge, kneeling beside some surveying equipment. The display flickered through its analysis with mechanical efficiency. Target designation: Maya Chen. Species: human. Age: 34 standard years. Occupation: geological surveyor. Current armament: 0. Threat level: minimal. Recommendation: standard restraint protocols sufficient. A single unarmed female, Zaltek announced to his hunting party, which was really just a fancy term for 7 heavily armed bullies. Separated from the main group. No weapons detected. This is what Command is paying us for, gentlemen. Easiest contract of the season. His team chittered their approval. The Krell had been professional mercenaries for over 3 centuries, which they mistook for competence. They had energy shields that could stop most small arms fire, plasma weapons that could melt through standard armor plating, and predictive combat algorithms that had been refined through countless conflicts. What they didn't have was experience with humans who'd actually been tested. That's the thing about humanity's diplomatic isolation. Sure, they weren't invited to the cool kids table at the Galactic Council. Sure, most species viewed them as cute primitives who'd probably blow themselves up within a generation or 2. But isolation meant nobody had really looked at their military records. Nobody had asked the uncomfortable questions about what kind of species goes from bronze swords to nuclear weapons in the blink of a cosmic eye. Nobody wondered what kind of training produces soldiers effective enough to scare their own government. The Krell were about to get an education they hadn't signed up for. "Drop teams 1 through 3, Zaltek ordered, adjusting his combat harness. "Surround and extract. The humans have a mining claim dispute with the Haxorian Consortium. We remind them that Haxorian credits spend better than human idealism. Standard intimidation protocols. Try not to break anything too expensive." The deployment pods launched with mechanical precision, streaking toward the surface like meteors with delusions of grandeur. Inside, the Krell hunters checked their weapons, activated their shields, and reviewed the mission brief one final time. Unarmed human surveyor. No backup within immediate range. Standard restraint and intimidation. In and out in 10 minutes. The combat AI in each suit ran final calculations, cross-referencing the target's biometric data against known threat databases. Maya Chen. No military service flags. No combat certifications. No registered weapons training. The algorithm was very thorough. It was also about to be very, very wrong. As the pod screamed through the atmosphere, Commander Zaltek allowed himself a satisfied clicking sound. Another easy payday. Another reminder to the upstart humans about where they stood in the galactic pecking order. Another flawless operation for the Krell Hunting Guild's record. The tactical computer agreed with his assessment. It displayed the target one more time: unarmed, minimal threat, easy extraction. The word unarmed was technically accurate. The phrase minimal threat was about to become the most expensive miscalculation of Zaltek's career. And easy was just adorable. Down on the surface, Maya Chen didn't even look up at the incoming pods. She just sighed, made a note on her datapad about the mineral composition of the rock sample she'd been examining, and mentally calculated how much paperwork this interruption was going to generate. It was going to be a lot. The Krell didn't just think they were good at violence. They had spreadsheets to prove it. 300 years of uninterrupted mercenary work across 47 star systems, with a client satisfaction rating that would make any corporation weep with joy. They were the galaxy's go-to solution for problems that needed solving with plasma fire and intimidation. Professional, efficient, expensive, and currently about to learn a very expensive lesson about assumptions. Commander Zaltek had been in the business for 60 years, which was long enough to develop opinions he mistook for wisdom. As his pod descended, he reviewed the contract details with the satisfied air of someone counting credits before they're earned. The Haxorian Consortium had a lithium claim dispute with human colonists. Standard corporate warfare. The humans had filed legal challenges, environmental impact assessments, and approximately 900 pages of documentation that nobody was going to read. The Haxorians had hired the Krell. That's how the galaxy worked. Papers versus plasma. Guess who wins? His combat suit was a masterpiece of military technology. Energy shields rated for sustained small arms fire. Plasma rifle capable of punching through 6 inches of steel plating. Predictive combat algorithms that analyzed opponent movements and calculated optimal response patterns in microseconds. The suit's onboard AI was running constant threat assessments, because paranoia kept you alive in this business. Currently, it was recalibrating the target data for the 7th time, which should have been a hint that something was off. But Zaltek was too busy feeling smug to notice. Target confirmation. Maya Chen. Human female. Age, 34 standard years. Height, 1.7 meters. Weight, 68 kilograms. Current armament status, 0 weapons detected. No energy signatures. No kinetic firearms. No bladed weapons. No explosive compounds. Threat assessment, minimal. Recommended engagement protocol, standard restraint and intimidation. Perfect. Zaltek loved easy money. The humans were so delightfully naive about how galactic politics actually worked. They thought their treaties and mining rights and carefully filed legal documents meant something. They'd learn. Everyone learned eventually. The galaxy ran on leverage, and leverage came from the business end of a plasma rifle. His team landed in synchronized formation, pods hissing open like the galaxy's most unnecessary dramatic entrance. 7 Krell hunters emerged, shields shimmering, weapons ready, moving with the practiced coordination of professionals who'd done this dance 1,000 times before. The targeting system painted Maya Chen in his heads-up display, still kneeling by her surveying equipment, apparently oblivious to the heavily armed aliens surrounding her position. The AI updated one final time. Unarmed target confirmed. No threats detected. Engagement authorization, green. Zaltek's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. The Haxorians were paying triple rates for this operation because they wanted it done quietly and efficiently. No permanent damage to the humans, just enough intimidation to make them pack up and leave. Professional scary, not actually murderous. The Krell had a reputation to maintain. What nobody had bothered to check, because why would they, was what kind of human becomes a geological surveyor on a frontier colony in disputed territory. What kind of person volunteers for isolation duty on a planet where corporate mercenaries might drop by to adjust your attitude about mining rights? What kind of background produces someone who hears plasma pods screaming through the atmosphere and doesn't even flinch? The Krell were about to find out. The tuition was going to hurt. Maya Chen had been having a perfectly good morning before the murder machines showed up. She'd found a promising thorium deposit, her coffee was still warm, and the local sunrise had been genuinely spectacular. Then 7 armored idiots decided to ruin it by landing in a tactical formation that was, she noted with professional disapproval, actually pretty solid. Shame they'd wasted good deployment protocol on such a stupid mission. She didn't look up from her geological scanner. The rock sample in front of her was legitimately interesting, and the Krell could wait 30 seconds while she logged the data. Priorities mattered. Also, making armed thugs wait was a power move, and Maya appreciated power moves. Geological survey log, day 47, she said into her handheld recorder, voice calm enough to order coffee. Thorium concentration 0.03%, Viable for extraction. Sediment layer suggests volcanic activity approximately 4 million years ago. Also, we have visitors. 7 contacts, heavy armor, plasma weapons. Krell, probably. They're doing that thing where they think formation discipline is intimidating. Her AI assistant, a glorified calculator she'd named Darwin for reasons that amused only her, chirped a response through her earpiece. Shall I alert colony security? And tell them what? That the Haxorian Consortium sent their pet mercenaries to scare the hippies? Security's response time is 12 minutes. This'll be over in 5. Should I be concerned about your safety? Darwin, sweetie, when have I ever asked you to worry about me? You programmed me not to answer rhetorical questions designed to highlight your reckless behavior patterns. Maya smiled. She'd programmed Darwin well. The AI had been her companion for 5 years, ever since she'd left military service and decided that rocks were significantly less complicated than people. Rocks didn't have agendas. Rocks didn't lie. Rocks didn't send you into questionable operations and then classify the results so thoroughly that your own therapist couldn't get clearance to read your file. The Krell were getting impatient. She could tell by the way their boot servos were shifting weight distribution. Nervous energy. They wanted to move, to act, to do the scary mercenary thing they'd been paid for. Let them wait. She had 30 seconds of data logging left, and she was going to use all 30 seconds. People who knew Maya casually, the handful of colonists she shared meals with and made small talk about mineral deposits, thought she was maybe a bit odd. Quiet. Competent. The kind of person who volunteered for solo survey duty in disputed territory, which suggested either bravery or a death wish. They didn't ask about her background because frontier colonies had an unspoken rule about not asking questions that might have uncomfortable answers. Her official file said geological surveyor, civilian contractor, education from Mars Technical Institute. All true. What it didn't mention was the 5 years before that. Operation Glacier, where a team of 8 specialists had extracted a hostage from a reinforced bunker defended by 40 combatants. Operation Nightfall, which officially never happened and unofficially made 3 enemy governments reconsider their life choices. A dozen other missions with names that sounded like rejected cologne brands and body counts that were still classified. Maya had left service because she was too good at it. Turns out, being exceptional at violence does things to your head. The military therapist had used words like hypervigilance and emotional dissociation, and maybe you should find a hobby that doesn't involve making people stop existing. So she'd found rocks. Rocks were great. Rocks didn't fight back. Though apparently, she was going to have to fight today anyway. She saved her data log, set down her scanner with the careful precision of someone who knew exactly how expensive equipment was, and finally looked up at the 7 armored figures surrounding her position. "Morning, gentlemen," she said, brushing dust off her knees as she stood. "Little early for a home invasion, isn't it? I haven't even finished my coffee." Commander Zaltek stepped forward, plasma rifle held in what he probably thought was an intimidating grip. His translator clicked to life, rendering his chittering into flat, mechanical English. "Human. You are trespassing on territory claimed by the Haxorian Consortium. Vacate immediately or face consequences." Maya looked at him, then at his rifle, then at his 6 teammates, all armed, all shielded, all probably feeling very confident about how this was going to go. She sighed the sigh of someone who'd really just wanted to study rocks today. "Okay," she said. "Let's talk about consequences. The thing about threatening people for a living is that you develop a sense for how it's supposed to go. The target sees the weapons, processes the overwhelming force differential, makes the rational calculation that cooperation beats ventilation, and everyone goes home happy. Well, the mercenaries go home happy. The target goes home reconsidering their life choices. It's a whole thing. Very predictable." Maya Chen was not following the script. She stood there, 5'7" of unimpressed human, looking at Commander Zaltek the way a disappointed teacher looks at a student who forgot their homework. Again. It was unsettling in a way the Krell commander couldn't quite articulate. His threat assessment training had covered fear responses, anger responses, even attempted negotiation responses. Nobody had covered vaguely disappointed responses. "Do you have an appointment?" Maya asked, voice carrying that special tone of customer service professionals everywhere. Polite. Professional. Absolutely done with your nonsense. Zaltek's mandibles clicked in confusion. An appointment? Yes. You know, where you contact the colony administrator, schedule a meeting, perhaps bring documentation supporting the Haxorian claim? Follow legal protocols? Do things the boring adult way that doesn't involve pointing weapons at surveyors who are trying to work. One of the Krell soldiers shifted uncomfortably. Maya tracked the movement without turning her head. Weight transfer to rear leg. Nervous. Good. Should be nervous. We are not here for negotiations, human. The Haxorian Consortium has retained our services to remove unauthorized personnel from claimed territory. You will comply or face escalation. Escalation, Maya repeated, like she was tasting the word. That's a fun euphemism. What legal authority are you operating under? Galactic Council resolution? Territorial arbitration ruling? Or just the time-honored tradition of, we have guns and you don't? Zaltek was starting to feel that special kind of frustration that comes from having your intimidation completely ignored. His combat suit's AI was also feeling something, though feeling wasn't quite the right word for what predictive algorithms experienced when their models started spitting out contradictory data. Warning. Biometric anomaly detected. Target heart rate, 68 beats per minute. Expected fear response, 110 to 140 BPM. Discrepancy significant. Recalculating threat assessment. Your compliance is not optional, Zaltek said, stepping closer. Professional scary. That's what the contract specified. Surrender peacefully and you will not be harmed. Resist and we will use necessary force. Maya looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at his plasma rifle. Then at the 6 other Krell, all in formation, all waiting for orders. The tactical computer was running calculations so fast it was generating heat. Something was wrong. The numbers weren't adding up. Humans under threat showed elevated cortisol, increased respiration, pupil dilation. This one showed none of that. Recalculating. Respiratory rate steady. Muscle tension minimal. Eye contact direct and sustained. Micro-expressions indicate assessment rather than fear. Warning. Behavioral pattern inconsistent with civilian profile. Maya stretched, the casual movement of someone working out a kink in their shoulder. To the Krell combat AI, it looked different. Perfect weight distribution. Balance maintained throughout motion. Movement economy suggesting extensive training. The algorithm frantically cross-referenced the pattern against its database of combat styles. Match found, human military close-quarters combat, advanced level. Confidence, 87%. Necessary force, Maya said, almost to herself. You know what's funny about that phrase? It assumes you've correctly calculated what's necessary. She looked directly at Zaltek, and something in her eyes made his shield harmonics fluctuate. Have you? Advance, Zaltek ordered, because when diplomacy fails and you're holding a plasma rifle, you have limited options. Restrain the target. 2 Krell soldiers moved forward, magnetic restraints ready. The combat AI was screaming warnings now, throwing up alerts that nobody was reading because they were too busy following orders. Alert. Threat assessment requires revision. Target biometrics indicate combat-ready state. Searching human military database for matches. Access restricted. Clearance insufficient. Attempting override. Stand by. Maya set down her coffee mug with the careful precision of someone who'd really rather not have to replace it. She looked at the 2 approaching Krell soldiers with something that might have been pity if you were feeling generous, and profound disappointment if you were being honest. Last chance, gentlemen, she said. You can walk away, file a complaint with the colony administrator, and everyone keeps their dignity and medical coverage. Or we can do this the educational way. The first Krell soldier reached for her arm. That's when the combat AI finally found what it was looking for in the human military database. Maya Chen's service record, what little wasn't redacted into illegibility. Operation classifications. Mission designations. And buried at the bottom, a combat effectiveness rating that made the algorithm pause in something approaching digital horror. Correction. Apex predator detected. Recommend immediate withdrawal. Threat level. Critical. The warning flashed across every Krell combat display simultaneously. Nobody saw it. They were all too busy watching what happened next. The Krell combat AI was having what could only be described as a machine learning panic attack. Its predictive algorithms had been refined through 3 centuries of warfare, fed data from thousands of engagements across dozens of species. It knew how prey behaved. It knew threat profiles. It knew the difference between a civilian and a combatant. Except it was currently looking at Maya Chen, and every sensor was screaming contradictory information. Threat assessment log, 9 hours 47 minutes and 23 seconds local time. Target: Maya Chen. Current status: standing casually, hands visible, no weapons drawn. Heart rate: 66 BPM, decreasing, not increasing. Respiratory rate: 12 breaths per minute, controlled, meditative, muscle tension, minimal in major groups, concentrated in core stabilizers. Pupil dilation. Normal stress hormones. Baseline. The AI did what any confused algorithm does. It dug deeper. It analyzed micro-expressions, the tiny involuntary movements that humans couldn't consciously control. Except Maya wasn't showing the micro-expressions of fear or stress. She was showing the micro-expressions of assessment. The way a predator watches prey, calculating distance, timing, optimal strike points. That was wrong. She was supposed to be the prey. The AI accessed the human military database, which was surprisingly hard to do because humans had this adorable habit of classifying everything. It found Maya's name attached to several operations, most of which were redacted so thoroughly they were basically digital Swiss cheese. But fragments remained. Efficiency ratings. Mission success percentages. A commendation for exceptional performance under extreme duress, which was military speak for did something classified and terrifying. Then it found Operation Glacier. 8 specialists. 40 hostile combatants. Reinforced position. Extraction mission. Success rate projected at 34%. Actual result: 8 specialists walked out. 40 hostiles did not. Maya Chen's personal combat assessment. Redacted. The AI tried Operation Nightfall next. That file was so classified it barely existed. Just a date, a location that had been geometrically scrubbed from the database, and a single note: recommend personnel involved receive mandatory psychological evaluation and indefinite leave. Combat effectiveness exceeds acceptable parameters. Combat effectiveness exceeds acceptable parameters. The AI processed that phrase. Humans had decided one of their own soldiers was too good at violence. That was like discovering water that was too wet. Warning priority override. Previous threat assessment invalid. Subject demonstrates predator at rest behavioral pattern, not prey under threat. Heart rate declining indicates preparation for action, not fear response. Posture analysis suggests extensive close quarters combat training. Movement efficiency indicates muscle memory from repeated violent engagement. The system frantically analyzed her stance. Weight distribution perfect for explosive movement in any direction. Hands relaxed but positioned for immediate weapon acquisition or strike deployment. Eyes tracking all 7 Krell positions simultaneously using peripheral awareness rather than direct observation. That wasn't civilian behavior. That was someone who'd spent years being trained to kill efficiently and had gotten disturbingly good at it. New classification loading. The AI cross-referenced everything. Her age, her service record fragments, the way she was standing, the fact that her breathing was actually slowing down as armed soldiers approached. It compared her biometric profile against every predator species in its database. Cathrian shock troops. Vrex hunter-killers. Thale berserkers. The pattern recognition algorithm found matches. Oh no. Classification update. Apex predator detected threat level. Extreme recommended action. Immediate withdrawal warning. Subject's calm demeanor indicates confidence in outcome. Secondary warning. Confidence likely justified. The alert flashed across every Krell heads-up display in urgent red text. It might as well have been written in invisible ink for all the attention anyone paid it. Commander Zaltek was focused on the unarmed human surveyor who needed to be restrained. His soldiers were focused on following orders. The tactical officer back in orbit was focused on monitoring communication channels. Nobody was watching the AI desperately trying to explain that they'd made a catastrophic miscalculation. The system did one final check, pulling up Maya's current armament status just to be absolutely sure. Current weapons, none detected threat level, critical. The AI would have laughed if it had the capacity for dark humor. She didn't need weapons. She was the weapon. The Krell had brought guns to a Maya-Chen fight, and the algorithm was increasingly certain that wouldn't matter at all. The first Krell soldier's hand reached for Maya's shoulder, magnetic restraints humming with readiness. The AI updated its combat prediction model one last time. Projected outcome, catastrophic failure for Krell forces probability, 94.7% recommendation, run. Nobody ran. That was unfortunate. The first Krell soldier's mistake was assuming that unarmed meant harmless. It was an understandable error. Most species in the galaxy needed weapons to be dangerous. Most species hadn't spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of turning literally anything into a method of making other humans stop moving. Maya moved. 3 movements. The combat AI counted them because that's what algorithms do when they're watching their predictions come true in real-time horror. Movement 1. Maya's left hand intercepted the Krell's wrist mid-reach, fingers finding the joint seam in his armor with the precision of someone who'd studied anatomy across multiple species. Pressure point exploitation, the AI noted dimly. Tactical knowledge of Krell physiology. Movement 2. Her right hand struck the soldier's elbow joint, hyperextending it at an angle that made his shield generator flicker from the disruption to his suit's power distribution. The plasma rifle fell from nerveless fingers. Movement 3. Maya caught the rifle before it hit the ground, transitioned it to a proper firing grip, and had it aimed at the remaining 6 Krell in the time it took for their threat assessment systems to register that something had gone terribly wrong. Total elapsed time, 1.4 seconds. "Oh look," Maya said, voice carrying that same customer service politeness. "I'm armed now." Funny how that works. The first soldier collapsed, clutching his arm, his suit's medical systems frantically administering pain suppressors. Maya examined the plasma rifle with the casual interest of someone checking out a new phone model. "Krell Armory Mark 7, she commented. "Decent stopping power, terrible ergonomics for human hands. The trigger pull is way too heavy and the weight distribution is all wrong. Who designed this? Someone who hates their own fingers." Commander Zaltek stared at her. Then at his downed soldier. Then at the rifle that was now pointed in his general direction. His combat training said to assess, adapt, and respond. His survival instinct said to maybe reconsider this entire career path. "Suppressing fire," he ordered, because when you're a professional mercenary and things go wrong, you fall back on training. "Pattern Delta. Take her down." 5 plasma rifles opened fire simultaneously, which would have been impressive if Maya hadn't already moved. She dove behind her surveying equipment, which wasn't actually adequate cover for plasma fire but served as a decent distraction. The shots melted through her geological scanner, which had cost her 3 months' salary and was now slag. "That was expensive," Maya called out, sounding genuinely annoyed. "Do you know how long the requisition process takes for technical equipment? I'm going to have to file 17 forms." She popped up from behind a different rock formation, because staying predictable gets you killed, and fired 3 shots. The plasma bolts weren't aimed at the Krell. They were aimed at the ground near their feet, close enough to make their shield generators spike power consumption, far enough to not technically qualify as lethal force. "Warning shots," she announced helpfully. "That's what those were. I'm being nice. Professional courtesy between people who've been trained to end conflicts efficiently." The Krell repositioned, because their tactical training was actually solid even if their target assessment was catastrophically wrong. They spread into a crossfire formation, shields overlapping, creating interlocking fields of fire. It was textbook small unit tactics. It would have worked beautifully against a normal civilian. Maya wasn't normal. And technically speaking, she'd stopped being a civilian the moment she'd picked up the rifle. She'd tried to explain that to her therapist once. The difference between person and weapon was sometimes just a matter of circumstance and immediate necessity. She scanned her environment with the practiced eye of someone who'd been trained to see everything as potential tactical advantage. The Krell shields were designed for energy weapons, rated to dissipate plasma and laser fire. They were very good at it. 3 centuries of refined technology, capable of shrugging off sustained fire from military-grade weapons. They were not designed for kinetic impact from improvised projectiles. Maya's eyes landed on her rock hammer. Geological survey equipment, designed for breaking mineral samples. 2 pounds of hardened steel on a composite handle. She'd used it that morning to chip thorium samples. She was about to use it for something entirely different. Darwin, she sub-vocalized into her earpiece. Calculate trajectory for a 2-pound projectile, arc pattern, target is the middle soldier's shield generator. Factor in local gravity and wind resistance. Maya, that's not a weapon. Everything's a weapon if you throw it hard enough. Calculate. The AI sighed, which was impressive for a program that didn't technically have lungs, and ran the numbers. A firing solution appeared in Maya's neural interface, courtesy of the military-grade augmentation she wasn't supposed to still have but definitely still had. She threw the hammer. It sailed through the air in a perfect arc, rotated exactly 1 1/4 times, and struck the Krell soldier's shield generator with enough force to crack the housing. His energy shield collapsed in a shower of sparks. He stood there, suddenly very aware that he was now the only unshielded target in a firefight. "Rock hammer," Maya called out cheerfully. "Geological survey equipment. Costs 40 credits. Apparently defeats 3-century-old shield technology. You might want to talk to your engineers about that." The soldier dove for cover. Smart. His companions repositioned to cover his exposed position. Also smart. They were learning. Unfortunately for them, they were learning that their training manual had a significant gap in the chapter titled, "What to Do When Your Target Weaponizes Their Office Supplies." 2 more Krell went down in the next exchange, victims of what could only be described as aggressively creative problem-solving. Maya used her survey tripod as a lever to catapult rocks at shield generators. She used her sample bags, filled with dense mineral samples, as improvised kinetic weapons. She used the terrain, her knowledge of Krell armor vulnerabilities, and a complete lack of concern for proper equipment maintenance protocols. The combat AI watched it all, updating its threat assessment every microsecond. Threat level: critical correction, severe correction, catastrophic correction. Please stop making me watch this. 4 Krell down. 3 remaining. Commander Zaltek's confidence had evolved from easy contract to expensive mistake to how do I explain this to the guild accountant. His combat suit's AI had one final suggestion, displayed in urgent crimson text. Recommendation: surrender secondary recommendation. Beg. Zaltek, to his credit, ignored both suggestions. Professional pride demanded it. Professional survival might have suggested otherwise, but pride was louder. That was about to be a problem. The remaining 3 Krell attempted what their training manual called a coordinated assault pattern, which was fancy military terminology for everyone attack at once and hope mathematics works in your favor. It was actually a solid tactical choice. Overwhelming force, multiple attack vectors, synchronized timing. Against most opponents, it would have been devastatingly effective. Maya Chen was not most opponents. She watched them move into position with the detached interest of a professor grading a practical exam, and finding the work mediocre. "Your left flank is exposed," she called out to the soldier designated Krell 3 by her mental targeting system. Her voice carried that helpful tone of someone pointing out you have spinach in your teeth. "The angle you're approaching from leaves your shield generator vulnerable to crossfire from your own team's position. Also, you're favoring your right leg. Old injury or new equipment." Krell 3 hesitated, which was his second mistake. His first mistake was being part of this operation. The hesitation cost him 0.7 seconds of reaction time. Maya used 0.5 of those seconds to put a plasma bolt into the ground near his feet, forcing him to dodge directly into the path of... "There it is," Maya said as Krell 3 stumbled into Krell 5's line of fire, shields intersecting and creating a momentary feedback loop that overloaded both generators. Friendly fire via forced positioning. Classic mistake. You'd think professional mercenaries would drill for that. Both soldiers hit the ground, shields flickering offline, suits rebooting. They weren't unconscious, just extremely reconsidering their employer's safety protocols. Maya could have shot them. She didn't. That would have been excessive, and excessive force generated paperwork. So much paperwork. "Let me explain something about humans," Maya said, moving to a new position because staying static gets you killed. We didn't evolve with natural weapons. No claws, no venom, no armor plating. You know what we evolved with? The ability to throw things accurately and the spite to keep trying until we got good at it. She punctuated this statement by throwing a fist-sized rock that struck Krell-4's rifle, knocking it from his grip. We went from throwing rocks at predators to throwing nuclear weapons at each other in about 10,000 years. We're really committed to the throwing things strategy. Commander Zaltek was starting to understand why humans made other species nervous. It wasn't their technology, which was adequate but unimpressive. It wasn't their diplomacy, which was earnest but naive. It was this: the ability to turn any environment into a weapon shop. The casual competence that came from a species that had spent millennia fighting the most dangerous opponent in their evolutionary history: other humans. Your formation is collapsing, Maya observed, like a disappointed instructor. Krell 2 is out of position, you've lost unit cohesion, and your tactical officer in orbit is probably having a breakdown watching his combat predictions fail in real time. She paused. Also, you're about to step on unstable ground. Zaltek looked down. He was indeed about to step on ground that Maya's geological survey had marked as having significant subsurface void spaces. He stepped sideways, then felt foolish for taking tactical advice from his target. See, this is the problem with fighting humans on human territory, Maya continued, her voice carrying the patient tone of someone explaining something obvious. We're environmental exploit specialists. We've been doing it since we figured out fire and pointy sticks. You brought 3 centuries of refined combat doctrine to a planet I've been surveying for 47 days. I know where every unstable surface is. I know which rocks are dense enough to damage your shields. I know the local wind patterns and how they'll affect your plasma fire. She demonstrated by shooting at an angle that let the wind carry the plasma bolt in an arc around a rock formation, nearly catching Krell 2 from an impossible angle. He dove for cover, shield sparking. Atmospheric tactical ballistics, Maya said cheerfully. Humans invented that sometime between bronze swords and gunpowder. We've had a lot of practice. The Krell combat AI was no longer bothering with threat assessments. It had moved on to calculating casualty projections and insurance liability. The numbers were not encouraging. Every tactical model it ran ended the same way, with Krell forces neutralized and one extremely annoyed geological surveyor filing a complaint about damaged equipment. Commander Zaltek had 1 soldier still combat effective. His own shields were at 40%, and he was beginning to suspect the Haxorian Consortium hadn't paid them enough for this contract. Not even close. You can still leave, Maya offered, reloading the plasma rifle with practiced efficiency. Walk away. Tell your employers the colony is more defended than advertised. Everyone keeps their medical benefits and I get back to my survey. It's a Tuesday. I'd really like this to stay a boring Tuesday. Zaltek looked at his remaining soldier. Looked at the 4 already down. Looked at his combat AI screaming recommendations to retreat. Looked at the human surveyor who just dismantled his hunting party using geological equipment and tactical advice. Professional pride warred with professional survival instinct. It was a close fight. Pride won, because pride is loud and survival instinct uses an inside voice that's easily ignored. Commander Zaltek had 60 years of mercenary reputation riding on this contract. 60 years of successful operations, satisfied clients, and an unbroken record of mission completion. He was not about to let one unarmed human surveyor, currently armed with his own soldier's rifle, but that was a technicality, ruin his perfect score. Stand down, he ordered his last combat-effective soldier, voice carrying the weight of command and impending poor decision-making. I will handle this personally. Maya watched him step forward, shields at maximum, and felt a pang of something that might have been respect if it wasn't so overshadowed by exasperation. Stupid bravery looked a lot like regular bravery from the outside. The results were different, but the commitment was equally genuine. You don't have to do this, she said, lowering the rifle slightly. Not disarming, just de-escalating. Her therapist would be proud. Her therapist would also be writing extensive notes about conflict resolution through superior firepower demonstration, but proud nonetheless. How? Zaltek demanded, mandibles clicking rapidly in what translated to profound confusion mixed with professional offense. How does an unarmed surveyor defeat trained warriors? I wasn't unarmed, Maya corrected. I was temporarily without tools. There's a difference. You had no weapons. Commander, I'm going to explain something about humans, and I need you to really listen because it's important. Maya set the rifle down carefully, a gesture of good faith that made Zaltek's combat AI scream warnings about tactical deception. Humans don't need weapons. We make weapons. From anything. Everything. It's kind of our whole evolutionary strategy. She gestured at the battlefield, littered with improvised chaos. Rocks. Hammers. Survey equipment. Your own rifle. Gravity. Wind. Unstable geology. I didn't bring weapons to this fight. The fight brought weapons to me. Humans have been doing this since we figured out that a stick makes a better hitting implement than a fist. We went from sticks to stones to bronze to iron to gunpowder to nuclear fission in 10,000 years. We're really, aggressively good at improvisation. You're a surveyor, Zaltek said, like he was trying to make the universe make sense through sheer force of repetition. I'm a surveyor now, Maya agreed. 5 years ago, I was something else. Something that made my own government uncomfortable enough to classify my service record and strongly suggest I find a new career path. Something that involved being very, very good at making situations resolve in my favor, usually quickly and always efficiently. She picked up a rock, examined it with professional interest. Sedimentary. Good weight distribution. Decent aerodynamics. See? Weapon. Humans have been throwing rocks at problems for millions of years. We got scary good at it. Zaltek's combat AI was having a complete existential crisis, running calculations on human evolutionary development and coming to uncomfortable conclusions. A species that weaponized their environment as a survival strategy. A species that turned toolmaking into an art form and then applied that art to violence with disturbing efficiency. A species that had been fighting each other for so long they developed tactics that worked against opponents who'd never encountered them before. The algorithm checked human military history. World War I, 20 million dead. World War II, 75 million dead. Countless smaller conflicts, each one a training ground for making humans better at fighting humans. The most dangerous game, played for millennia, producing survivors who could adapt to any combat situation because they'd learned against opponents who could adapt right back. Assessment update. Human military personnel are trained to fight humans. Humans are classified as persistence predators with tool-making capability and pattern recognition intelligence. Training against human opponents produces combat effectiveness that translates universally against species who have never encountered human tactical doctrine. Conclusion. We are profoundly outmatched. I could have killed all of you, Maya said quietly. I didn't want to. I still don't want to. I just want to finish my survey, file my report, and have a peaceful afternoon. But if you make me choose between your pride and my survival, Commander, I've had extensive training on which one to prioritize. Zaltek looked at her. Really looked. Saw the calm eyes of someone who'd made harder choices than this and lived with the consequences. Saw the relaxed posture of someone confident in their ability to handle whatever came next. Saw the tired expression of someone who'd really rather not add more bodies to a count that was already too high. His shield generators hummed at maximum power. His plasma rifle was charged and ready. He had 3 centuries of Krell combat doctrine backing his training. And he was looking at a human surveyor who'd just explained, very patiently, why none of that mattered. Professional pride is important. Professional survival is more important. But most important, Zaltek was realizing, was professional wisdom. The wisdom to know when you'd made a fundamental miscalculation about the nature of your target. The combat AI made one final update, pushing the alert directly into Zaltek's neural interface with maximum priority. Threat assessment final. Extinction class combatant. Species designation, human, military trained. Combat effectiveness, exceeds all predictive models. Recommendation, immediate surrender. Alternative recommendation, prayer, if your species has a relevant deity. Zaltek's mandibles clicked slowly. He looked at his downed soldiers. Looked at the human who'd put them down using office supplies and tactical creativity. Looked at his combat AI begging him to make the smart choice. He powered down his rifle. The Haxorian Consortium, he said slowly, did not provide adequate intelligence for this operation. No, Maya agreed. They really didn't. You will file a complaint through proper channels? I'll file 17 complaints through 17 proper channels. Humans love paperwork. It's our second favorite way to defeat opponents. Zaltek's remaining soldier was already calling for medical evacuation. The commander stood there, shield still active, pride thoroughly bruised but life still intact. What was your military designation? He asked. Before you became a surveyor. Maya smiled. It wasn't a particularly warm smile. Classified, she said. But the unofficial translation would be problem solver. I solved problems that other people couldn't solve. Or wouldn't solve. Or legally shouldn't solve but politically needed solving anyway. And now you study rocks. Rocks are peaceful. Rocks don't require moral flexibility or classified after-action reports. Rocks are just rocks. She picked up her damaged scanner, sighed at the melted components. Were just rocks. Before they became ammunition. Zaltek's combat AI logged the entire encounter for future training purposes. The Krell Hunting Guild would study this. They'd update their threat assessment protocols. They'd add humans to a very specific list of species that required significant caution and possibly hazard pay. The commander backed away slowly, keeping his movements clear and non-threatening. Professional courtesy between warriors, even when one warrior had thoroughly defeated the other using geological survey equipment. For what it's worth, he said, you would have been an excellent Krell. Thanks, Maya said. You'd make a decent human, once you learned to weaponize office supplies. It wasn't quite respect. But it was acknowledgement. In the strange mathematics of combat, sometimes that was enough. The Krell medical evacuation took 12 minutes, which was exactly how long Maya had predicted. She spent that time cataloging damaged equipment, taking photographs for her insurance claim, and composing what would become the most sarcastic incident report in colonial administration history. Darwin helped with the documentation, offering helpful suggestions like, perhaps understating the number of improvised weapons used, and maybe don't mention that you enjoyed parts of it. Maya ignored both suggestions. Honesty was important in paperwork. Also, she definitely hadn't enjoyed it much. The Krell ship retreated to high orbit, presumably to have uncomfortable conversations with their employers about the phrase, unarmed surveyor, and why it needed significant contextual clarification when applied to humans. Commander Zaltek sent a formal communication to the colony administrator, which was diplomatic code for, we are leaving and never coming back, and also you might want to update your personnel files. Then things got complicated, because violence always generates attention, and attention always generates committees. The Galactic Council got involved, which was their polite way of saying, we need to discuss what just happened before it becomes a precedent. The Haxorian Consortium attempted to spin the incident as colonial aggression, which lasted approximately 45 minutes before someone released the security footage. Orbital satellites had captured everything. Maya, kneeling by her survey equipment. 7 armed Krell surrounding her. Maya, defending herself using what could only be described as aggressive geology. The footage went viral across 17 star systems. Humans suddenly became significantly more interesting to species who'd previously dismissed them as harmless primitives. The comments section of the Galactic News Network was particularly enlightening. Did she just throw a rock hammer through a military-grade shield? Humans weaponize their survey equipment. Note to self, never threaten human surveyors. My combat instructor said humans were easy targets. My combat instructor is an idiot. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session to discuss human engagement protocols. The debate lasted 3 days and produced a document that could be summarized as, humans are weird about violence, assume they're always armed even when they're demonstrably not, and maybe don't start fights you're not prepared to finish in unexpected ways. The official terminology was more diplomatic. The new protocol designated humans as environmental combat specialists, with a threat classification that scaled based on available materials. An unarmed human in an empty room, moderate threat. An unarmed human in literally any other environment, significant threat. An unarmed human with military training, evacuate and call for backup. The Krell Hunting Guild updated their target assessment matrix. Right next to species like the Vrex Berserkers and Thale Warrior caste, they added a new entry: humans, all categories, all environments. Threat level: variable, unpredictable, possibly carrying rocks. Insurance companies across the galaxy revised their mercenary policies. There was now a specific clause about human encounters that required additional premiums and extensive liability coverage. The phrase, "but they were unarmed," was no longer accepted as a valid excuse for failed operations. 3 separate military academies requested interviews with Maya for their tactical training programs. She declined all of them with varying degrees of politeness, ranging from "thank you but no" to "I changed careers specifically to avoid this kind of attention." The Haxorian Consortium quietly dropped their territorial claim and moved their mining operation to a different system. One where the surveyors were nice, predictable Thalaxians who didn't know 17 ways to kill you with sedimentary rocks. Back on the colony, Maya filed her incident report, her equipment damage claim, her formal complaint about corporate intimidation tactics, and her geological survey results. The survey results were actually quite promising. The thorium deposits were commercially viable, the mineral composition suggested additional valuable elements, and the local geology was fascinating. Her supervisor sent back the incident report with a single comment: "Next time, please try to keep equipment damage below 5,000 credits." Maya sent back a reply: "Next time, please ask corporate mercenaries to schedule appointments." The equipment damage claim was approved. The formal complaint triggered an investigation that would take months and generate enough paperwork to deforest a small planet if anyone still used paper. The geological survey results were filed under "commercially viable, survey complicated by armed interference, recommend security detail for future expeditions." Colony Security did a full review of the incident. Their conclusion was professionally worded but basically amounted to, "We're very glad Maya Chen is on our side. Also, we're updating our response protocols because apparently 12 minutes is too slow." Maya's fellow colonists treated her differently after that. Not fearfully, exactly. More like carefully. The way you treat someone who's just reminded everyone that quiet and harmless are not synonyms. She still got invited to community dinners. People still made small talk about mineral deposits and crop yields. But now there was an underlying awareness. A knowledge that the woman who discussed thorium concentrations over coffee had once been classified as a problem solver by people who dealt with very specific kinds of problems. She didn't mind. It was honest. She preferred honest to comfortable lies. The galaxy learned something that day. Something humans had known for millennia but had politely not advertised during their clumsy integration into galactic society. Earth had spent 10,000 years as a combat training ground where the opponent was always human. Always adaptive. Always creative. Always capable of turning anything into a weapon because that's what you did when you were a soft, fragile primate trying to survive on a planet that really wanted you dead. Every human carried that evolutionary legacy. Some just had more recent practice accessing it. Maya went back to her geological survey. She had thorium deposits to map, mineral compositions to analyze, and a replacement scanner to requisition through proper channels. The paperwork would take weeks. She didn't mind. Paperwork was peaceful. Though she did keep a rockhammer within arm's reach, just in case the galaxy needed another reminder about human improvisation. Old habits, after all, died hard. 6 months after the incident, targeting systems across the galaxy received a mandatory update. The patch notes were brief and unusually honest for military software. Human threat assessment protocols revised. Previous classifications inadequate. Update required for operational safety. The change was subtle but significant. Where human targets had once been evaluated based on visible armament and immediate threat capability, the new protocols added layers of environmental analysis. Available materials within 3 meters, potential weapons. Humans' proximity to tools, rocks, or literally any objects, threat multiplier. Humans' background status. If military service detected or suspected, escalate threat assessment by factor of 10. The phrase unarmed human was flagged for manual review, because the galaxy's combat AIs had collectively learned that unarmed was a temporary condition that humans could resolve with disturbing speed. Across 17 star systems, mercenary guilds updated their contracts. The Krell Hunting Guild added humans to their "Do Not Engage Without Extreme Cause and Extensive Hazard Pay" list, right between hive mind collectives and anything involving temporal mechanics. The entry included a footnote that referenced Colonial Survey Incident 774, with attached footage that became mandatory viewing for all guild trainees. The lesson was simple: underestimate humans at your own risk. Preferably someone else's risk. Definitely not your risk. Military academies across the galaxy began teaching Human Tactical Doctrine as a specialized course. The curriculum covered improvisation strategies, environmental exploitation, and the uncomfortable reality that humans had spent millennia fighting the most dangerous opponent in their evolutionary history: each other. The passing grade required students to list at least 15 ways an unarmed human could neutralize an armed opponent using only materials found in a standard classroom. Most students struggled to find 10. Humans, when asked, could usually list 30 without much thought. The Galactic Council's official position on humans evolved from promising newcomers requiring guidance to capable species requiring careful diplomatic engagement. The phrasing was diplomatic. The underlying message was not. It translated roughly to, they're friendly until they're not, and when they're not, they're terrifyingly effective. Be nice. Trade negotiations with human colonies took on a noticeably more respectful tone. Territorial disputes were suddenly resolved through proper legal channels rather than armed intimidation. Corporate entities discovered that threatening human workers generated expense reports that executives found deeply upsetting. The Haxorian Consortium's stock price dropped 14% after the incident became public. Their next shareholder meeting included uncomfortable questions about due diligence and risk assessment. The executive who'd authorized the Krell contract was reassigned to a position that didn't involve decision-making. Or humans. Or really anything important. Several species began recruiting human military advisors, offering impressive salaries for tactical consultation. The humans who accepted these positions found themselves explaining, repeatedly, that just use what's around you wasn't actually a complete tactical doctrine so much as a survival instinct refined through millennia of necessity. But perhaps the most significant change happened in how other species viewed human civilians. The galaxy had made a fundamental error in assuming that civilian meant non-combatant. For most species, that was true. Civilians were civilians, warriors were warriors, and the distinction was clear. Humans didn't work that way. Human civilians were just warriors who'd chosen different careers. The skills remained. The training remained. The evolutionary legacy of being persistence predators who'd survived by being smarter, more adaptable, and more creative than everything trying to kill them, that remained too. Every human kindergartner learned to throw. Every human teenager learned that objects had weight, mass, and potential energy. Every human adult had spent a lifetime in an environment where physics was a weapon if you were clever enough. Military training just refined what was already there. The galaxy learned to read human warning signs. Calm demeanor under threat, dangerous. Relaxed posture when surrounded, very dangerous. Casual assessment of environmental objects, extremely dangerous. Patient explanation of why you should reconsider your current course of action, run. Back on Colonial Survey Station 774, Maya Chen finished her geological report 3 days late. The thorium deposits were commercially viable. The mineral composition included several unexpected rare elements. The local geology was fascinating and would support sustainable mining operations for at least 40 years. Her supervisor's response came back within an hour: excellent work. Approved for publication. Also, the Council is requesting you present your findings at next month's Mineral Resources Conference on Proxima Station. Maya stared at the message. A conference. With representatives from 17 species. Who would all recognize her from the footage that had gone viral. Who would all remember that she'd defeated 7 armed mercenaries using rocks and office supplies. She typed her response: "Will there be refreshments? I'm not presenting without decent coffee." The supervisor's reply: "We'll ensure premium refreshments are available. Please try not to weaponize them." Maya smiled. She sent back a simple acknowledgement and returned to her survey work. The galaxy had learned its lesson about human surveyors. She'd learned that even when you change careers to avoid violence, sometimes violence finds you anyway. And when it does, at least you can file an expense report. Her AI assistant, Darwin, chimed in with a notification. You have 17 new connection requests on the Galactic Professional Network. 14 are from military recruiters. 3 are from insurance companies wanting to know your secret. Delete them all, Maya said, examining a particularly interesting sample of crystalline formation. I'm busy. I have rocks to study. You know they're going to keep trying. Let them. I changed careers for a reason. I'm done solving other people's problems with violence. Now I solve my own problems with patience, proper documentation, and occasionally aggressive geology. The galaxy seems to think you're available for consultation. The galaxy, Maya said, making a note about the crystal's refractive properties, can file a formal request through proper channels and wait 6 to 8 weeks for processing. I'm on survey duty. Darwin was quiet for a moment, processing. You enjoyed it, didn't you? Just a little. Maya didn't answer immediately. She set down her scanner, looked at the horizon where alien suns painted the sky in colors Earth had never known, and considered honesty. I enjoyed surviving, she said finally. There's a difference. I enjoyed being good enough at something that I got to walk away. I enjoyed knowing that my training wasn't wasted. But enjoying the fight itself? That's the part that made me quit. That's the part that scared me. And now I study rocks. Rocks are honest. Rocks don't make moral demands. Rocks are just rocks, until someone makes me throw them. And then they're still rocks. They just happen to be traveling faster. The AI filed that away under philosophical observations that were simultaneously profound and slightly concerning. Across the galaxy, a new generation of combat algorithms updated their threat databases. The entry for human unarmed now included extensive caveats, environmental considerations, and a recommendation that reads simply, assume armed, assume trained, assume dangerous, proceed accordingly. Or as Commander Zaltek put it in his after-action report, which became required reading at the Krell Military Academy, the system said, unarmed target. It should have said, apex predator temporarily without tools. We learned this distinction expensively. The report's conclusion was even more succinct. Recommend all future operations involving humans include the following question. Is this worth potentially being defeated by office supplies? If answer is no, reconsider operation. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humans were friendly, cooperative, even enthusiastic about peaceful integration into galactic society. They genuinely wanted to get along, share resources, and contribute to the greater community. But friendly didn't mean harmless. Cooperative didn't mean weak. And enthusiasm for peace didn't erase 10,000 years of evolutionary experience in making threats stop being threats. The system's new classification for humans was elegant in its simplicity. Apex detected. Approach with respect. Engage with caution. Threaten at your own risk. Maya Chen went back to her geological survey, coffee in one hand, scanner in the other, and the quiet satisfaction of someone who'd reminded the galaxy of something important. Humans didn't need to carry weapons. They were the weapons. They just preferred to study rocks instead. Unless, of course, someone gave them a reason to throw those rocks. Then the rocks became kinetic education devices, and the lesson was always expensive. The galaxy, having paid tuition, decided to audit the class rather than enroll. It was a wise choice. Probably the wisest choice anyone had made in months. Right up there with Maya's decision to bring extra coffee to work that morning. You never knew when you'd need caffeine to process the paperwork from defeating mercenaries with sedimentary samples. The universe, as always, had a sense of humor. Humans, as always, were the punchline. And everyone else, as they were rapidly learning, was the setup.